Hi guys, welcome. Glenn Fenghaus here with a new instruction video for the AKAI APC-40 MIDI controller controlling Davinci Resolve 14 Beta 6 using my controllermate configuration version 1.6b OFX. It's going to be a full instruction video with all the details of the latest configuration, the whole controller. So you won't have to go through manuals and watch old videos, and which are probably outdated. Some of these features in there. So yeah, let's get started. So once you've switched on your controller and everything is done according to the initialization procedure, you will find in the manual. Not going to show you, that's boring. Let's start with explaining a little bit about the structure of the way it's set up. Everything is sort of focused around this area, which is labeled track selection. Basically, these are, in this case, 9 master control buttons that set the right side, but also sometimes some things on the left side of the controller, so that it controls specific page or function within Davinci Resolve. The icons are labeled so that it's a bit more easy to understand what's underneath. But after a while, you have to rely on your muscle memory and your memory. But there's some definite logic in there, and after a while, you'll start really embracing the logic of the way it's set up. It also, I called it a center and outwards and down and upwards sort of mentality, where most of the stuff you use often is around the center, so that you don't have to move your hand a lot. And then moving upwards, so the first stuff you start touching is this, and you go upwards to the lesser use features, or more outwards to from primary to secondary control and sizing and keying and stuff like that. It will show itself after a little bit of usage. So let's start all the way in the center. Primary bars. So at the moment I press the button, this whole section on the right is set up for controlling the primary bars, and going bottom up, it's luminance in the lift, gamma, gain. Then you have your reds, so we can push reds in the lift, gamma, and gain. Then the greens, make some psychedelic looking girl, and then the blues all the way on top. On the right, you have a column which is controlling the printer light. So for fine detailed specific points going up and going down, let me switch on printer light first. There's one requirement. It tries to do it automatically, but it's a toggle. So it's sometimes already on when it switches it off, and that's just the moment you start with your setup, you have to check if it's on. I've written about that in the manual as something that's a bit difficult to control for me. Once it's on, then you can go and you have your printer light luminance, red points, single points, green, blue, and you press the modifier key underneath, and you go to cyan, yellow, and magenta and yellow. Yeah, let's grab a still, play forward, play backwards, stop. Now we're a different clip, so let's move to the same clip and switch on looping. Already a little few features that you see being used in practice. Move to the left. You have your wheel controls, primary wheels and your lock wheels, both set up almost identical, so you know where to grab. So the bottom row, obvious lift, gamma, and gain, and offset. You go up, and then from here to there, you have all your principal parameters like temperature, tint, etc., all laid out in the same way on lock and wheels. So we start with saturation, then we have hue, then we have temperature. You see it automatically switching on the screen, tint, and then we go up contrast and pivot, and we go up more and we have mid-tone details, color boost, shadows, and highlights. Yeah. Grab a nice still. Locks the same, everything in the same place. So saturation, hue, temperature, and tint. So your colors. Here your contrast type of controls, And then here you have your extra like mid-tone details and color boost and shadows, etc. And underneath here, shadow, mid-tone, highlight, and offset, all the same. These buttons underneath always function as reset buttons in almost every page. Yeah, for selective parts, and the last one is generally everything. You will see this icon appearing on different areas. The same icon means reset everywhere. But sometimes these buttons have different functions, and in this case they have two functions. Because this is sort of an area where you prefer to use controller ball to do this. But obviously this controller doesn't have a ball, but we got a Kensington ball. And with a single modifier key, we can determine what that ball controls. So if we want to control the lift, or the gamma, or the gain, or the offset. And if I press short, it's reset. So long press and hold, it's control, and short press, it's reset. Same for the log page. If you prefer a parallel 3 ball control, which most people do, especially if you're grading every day, you can buy, for example, a tangent ripple that has just those balls, and you rely for everything else on this controller because there's obviously a billion more features than just these 3 balls. So you can buy them cheaply separately and have a complete control. If you can live with one, like I do, then this is also working very well. Let's move over a little bit to the left. Curves. So you see when you press these buttons that there's stuff lighting up on top, indicating that you have features there. In this case, you can switch between custom curves, luminance saturation, hue saturation, saturation, UU, and the new hue luminance. I had no space, so I put it there. Before this was not really used because it broke, but in Resolve 14 it's pretty good actually. Let's reset everything. Let's say I want to start with the red. We just start turning the red, and you can immediately see it turning down the red. And the yellow push up, and we have some blue in there, so let's go and do something with the blue. You see? And now it's not breaking up anymore, at least. You can still break it, but if you use it with moderation, it'll work very nice. So these 6 here control these 6 vector controls, and here you have, depending on which one you've selected, you can, for the selected one, go up and down and left and right. So if you have one selected by hand, again, let's say we pick a nice code, then these 2 function as a control for this one you've selected, and you can fine-tune the position left and right here. Yeah. If you want a Bezier curve, you press the first button and it turns into a Bezier. Turn it on and off. That works the same on all these pages. Even if there are only 2 available, it'll just work on 2. So you have only 2 available. No, you have nothing available. Wrong example. Oh yeah, here you have 2 defaults available. So when they're defaults available, you can start using those. And it'll automatically pop them up for you. If you don't use defaults, then you don't. It's just there. Custom curves, less to control, of course, because it's sort of idea that you click there and you do it custom. But yeah, you can still do stuff. Let's say you've got a point here and you want to turn it into a Bezier curve. For some reason, every time when I have this screen recording on, this Bezier function, sort of stutters, but that's the recording, trust me, it's working. I can unlink these things, so I can then manually go and do my low and low soft and my high soft. Here I have the individual intensity controls for the curves. You can go and cycle through the different colors if you want a soft clip only for green and blue. And here the same, you have your cycles and you have some reset options available. Yeah, speaks for itself. Start turning them and you'll see what's happening. So different curve controls. Move to the right, qualifier. So underneath the general features we have here, so we switch on our key highlight so we can see the key we're creating. And then you just start turning and you can pull up and you can make a specific range. And we can increase the softness. And we can take the saturation, I only want the saturation level. and with softness, and top is the color, width, and you have all the way up, you have clean black, clean white, blur radius, and in and out to use. And you can show the key, of course, also in black and white, or in just highlights, or don't. And you can reset the individual qualifiers or the whole qualifier. And then you have last remaining, you have a swap for swapping the key. That's it for the qualifier. Yeah, of course, once you've... No, I'll show you later. I don't want to skip forward too much. Shapes. So you have all the shapes there you can select. So you want a circle, or you want a square, or whatever shape your heart desires. So let's take a square. So then on the right side we can set the size, aspect, pan, tilt, rotate it, opacity, and then on top we have all the softness. It's always all the softness, soft left to right. And depending on which shape you have different softnesses. So let's say I have a line, I have 5 available. Let me see. Oh yeah, this one has only 1. So in that case, only 1 will be mapped. The other ones will not function. So it will always match what you've selected. You can some functions here. You can swap it, make it a mask, and that's it for the shapes. Sizing, fully mapped extended sizing, different pages. So if you press the AB button, you access submenus. In this case, edit sizing, input sizing, etc. So in your edit sizing, you can go and have fun. You can link, you can flip and flop, and flap and flip. I don't know if that exists. And it all sort of starts speaking for itself. So from bottom to top, you move through the controls. And you can reset individual sections if available, or everything. If you go to output sizing, there's one extra hidden feature. I've labeled it here as blanking. So you can select different blanking presets to make it look really cinematic if you want, like this. What else in there? I think for sizing wise, we've got it. Yeah, no, that's it. Key, so if you set a key, let's say we have a key here, and you go to key, then you can see the key in action. If you have a key, we have a key? Yes, we have a key. Where is my key? Where is my key? Maybe swap. A swap was on. So here, you can swap your key output and input as an extra function. That's why I wasn't not seeing it. And then of course you have your gain, so you can reduce the key that you had set, reduce the effect of your changes of your grade, for example. There's a large hidden feature underneath. I just created this OFX thing, and that's hidden underneath key, because there's not a lot under here, so I want to use it as much as I can. I will show that later. I move on to blur. Let's go to blur. Let's reset this look first, and then here we can link and unlink, and if we unlink, then we can control, of course, blur. And we have level and coring softness and scaling, HV ratio. I never use, and if I use it, I can use my hand. Didn't want to waste some mapping for it. You can switch here between mist and sharpen. So if you want to do some nice misting, you can go here and do your tricks. There's a second function under blur. It's in a sort of similar category. If you press it, you go to motion effects, only for the studio users. And then the AB key, you can cycle noise reduction through the different number of frames you want to use. So let's say I want to use 2 frames. I unlink Luma and Chroma, and then I can go and adjust Luma and Chroma. I can have my motion, sensitivity, and the blend. I move up and I go to spatial thresholds for the spatial noise reduction and the blend. And my last control is for the motion blur. Yep, and I can reset individual areas or everything. And I switch back to blur again. So first press is blur, second press motion effects for this one. And we've covered, sorry, we've covered all the master keys except the whole big OFX section, which I come on back later. So underneath here we have some general global features, switching to the media page, back to color, edit, new Fairlight page, of course, and delivery page. If I'm in color, I can switch on and off caching. It switches to smart caching. Clips, timeline, gallery. I just hate my mouse, so everything is there, and you know. Wipe. Let's say I've got some previous made grade selected in the gallery. Press the wipe. Now I have here 3 buttons which function as modifier keys for, in your case, this central button here. In my case, this is broken after an accident. So I've mapped it to my Kensington ball. That's an option if you want it as well. Easy to do. And I can play with my wipe. If I have a different preference, I want to have a vertical wipe, it'll automatically adjust and make it, and cycle through the different wipe types that are available and switch it off entirely. That's for this. We were here. So, split. So, split button, you can have the different functions to show the, for example, if I have more versions, so let's create a few versions, and then you can see all your versions, or you can see the selected clips if you have more selected, etc., etc. If I switch it off, it's off. Looping on and off. Pop. Yeah. What else? Lightbox, viewer mode, yeah, and the new full mode, which comes in handy with OFX. You will see later, where you definitely need the real estate. You can bypass a single node or a grade. That's the bottom section. Some general buttons in the top section to copy and paste the grade, copy and paste a node. You press copy, it shows there's something to paste, you paste it and it pastes it on the new node, and the same for the grade. Keyframe type, if you switch to different keyframe type, color or sizing, and if you then play and you stop, you can set a dynamic keyframe, and you can set a static keyframe. And if you switch on this button here, and the navigation panel will then function as a keyframe navigator. You can navigate between your keyframes, and you can up is delete, yeah, and up is delete. And I want to make another one here, play, stop, and make another one. So you have an idea of how this navigation works on keyframes, and it works the same for other types like nodes, markers, and galleries. So let's say I create some nodes, and I switch on a node. Now I maneuver through my nodes. I can delete a node. I can, if I press down, I can start labeling a node, and then I move to the other node again. So that's for node navigation. Default, if everything is off here, it's navigate between clips. And undo, redo. I have marker navigation, so if I generate markers on the timeline. So let's quickly create a few markers here, just to show you something. Switch on marker. Now I can switch between the markers. If I press down, I can start typing the marker. If I press up, when I'm on the marker, I can delete the marker. Yeah. So this is a very quick way to play with markers. Yeah. Down. So very fast and handy. Gallery. So now I can maneuver through the gallery. You know, also very handy. Yeah, this one, I think I showed it. Reset and press long, reset everything. Undo when it's back. Go to the previous first frame and the last frame. Let's show you some tracking. So here I have a clip. Just create a little small tracking circle around on the headlights in this area. And let's say I want to track this, so I switch to the tracker page. If I press the button multiple times, I switch between the different tracking options, stabilizer, effects tracking. Here I can determine what I want tracked. And let's say I want to start tracking this headlight. So, got a nice track. Can track forward, backward, pause. You can change the tracking type from cloud tracker to point tracker. So everything that's lit you have available. Now let's say I don't like a specific position and I want to make a keyframe there. So I switch to my frame mode and I just modify the position to the other side for whatever crazy reason. And now it creates a keyframe. So if I then switch on the navigation mode to keyframe, it will interact with the tracker. And I can switch between keyframes. I can delete keyframe. Like before, I can set a new keyframe. So very handy to have available as well in the tracking area. And it works for all the different tracking modes that have this feature available. The new Resolve new stabilizer, you see you have less available, but you can switch between the three new funky stabilization types, and you press stabilize and it will go stabilize. Not much there to put on the controller. And then you have your FX tracker. So I think that's it for the tracker. You have a reset button that resets all the tracks you've currently recorded. Let's say we like this. We have another clip. Let's go back to this clip and let's say we like this grade so much that we want to put it into a memory. If you use memories a lot, you can play with memories. I have 8 memories under a key here, the memory button. And you'll see with lights, the red ones are to record that position and the green ones is to retrieve it. So let's say if I want to store it in this position and in this position, and then another clip, let's move to the next clip, and I want to get this and put this grade for whatever reason on that clip. That's it. Yeah. So 8 memory positions can be handy. Next to it, apply an append graph for standard gallery grade. So let's assume we want this one. So you just say apply, or you say append, and it appends, and it becomes a thick grade. Yeah, speaks for itself. Yeah, I think I've covered everything except the new OFX part. Okay, so let's move to that. So what happens, let's say you have a blank grade and you want to start playing with OFX. The first thing you do is you go into the key mode and then you press the AB key, which is normally used to switch pages, but then you activate basically the OFX mode and you see a pop-up window saying OFX mode. If you press it again, you switch back to key mode, etc. Yeah? The button underneath will start detecting if you have an OFX and what OFX you have implemented. So if you press it now, there's nothing there. It says, oh, I can't find anything. This is what is supported, but you see a whole list of OFX, but I can't find anything. So what you have to do is you have to then, of course, put an OFX there. If you have a list of favorites, for somehow a reason the version 14b6 doesn't store the favorites. You can do it, but it loses it. So let's say you want to put a color compressor on there. You put a color compressor on there and then you press detect, and now it detects color compressor and it configures on the right side all the controls to start using the color compressor, and you can start playing with the controls. So first thing you normally do is you select a color. So let's pick a color, pick red, and then we start compressing everything towards red. We make it very cool and funky. And we can of course also do the saturation to match, and probably less common, the luminance also, but we can play with it. Yeah? So you can switch somewhere else and you can come back and you're still in that same configuration, so it won't lose it. Even if you go to another clip, you apply the same OFX, it will still work without changing anything. if you change OFX, you have to let it rediscover it. So contrast pop, you press the button once, it says contrast pop, and you start playing again. So very simple, very straightforward. You just, if you change to a new OFX that it supports, you just ask it to detect it for you. So if you have a huge OFX, like some of the supported ones, like a lens flare, oh, dropped it. Yeah, dropped it. Now, what you see is that everything is collapsed and it's not visible. So what happens? Well, see what happens. It'll uncollapse everything for you that's needed to control this. Make it full screen. And now I have full control over position, all kinds of cool parameters, which I've mapped in a somehow logical way, grouped together in features that make sense together. You will figure it out. I've got a template, an Excel spreadsheet where it shows everything that's mapped. And then you have all kinds of stuff there. Again, I can use the color picker to select the light color. I can, you know, what else do I have here? I have two color pickers, so I have the other one as well. And I have, sometimes I have menus underneath there. In this case, it's just the light source masking underneath, all kinds of buttons and stuff. You have to really play with each OFX and see what's done there. Let's see some that have a menu, for example, this one. If I press this button, I have the color picker again, but if I have this one, I can switch the menu for glowing image to shiny region and to glow alone, which is very useful because then I can set my threshold and until I have the level of glow that I want and play with it. So here you have another menu, vignetting and reflecting in camera. So this button is always reset, the last one. These are used for selecting the OFX, and the 5 remaining one operate toggle and menu type functions. That's all the logic in there. And here you have your controls. And yeah, the huge ones will automatically open. Face refinement is also probably a big one. So it's here, face refinement. It's one that is, you see what it opens, it can control. The stuff that is remained closed is just too much. There are so many features under there. And that makes it, yeah, it's just limited. Would make it crazy with so many submenus to start controlling all these little things. But the core is there. All the other ones supported have everything mapped. I think this is the only one that doesn't have everything mapped. That's possible. For example, what we have here, we can go and have a look at the, I think the film grain is also nice, of course. It's not so big, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, it's smaller, but still a lot of stuff under there to control. And then we have camera shake, I think was a quite big one. And again, yeah, it's already open. So, and here you have a lot of stuff. You have even, I think you have even 3 menus under there. So this menu, and you have here a menu, on, off, do nothing. And the rest is all pure controls in different sections. So very intuitive after a while. What it does, it also activates for you, I think probably that you can see that if I go to face refinement. What is my face refinement? Face refinement. Let's say I'm not showing my overlay. Then in face refinement it will start doing some weird stuff, but of course you select it, it will automatically activate for you if you've seen. Now it's active. And I can start analyzing and it'll have the overlay active, otherwise you won't see anything there. And you think it's not working, but it is. Yeah. And now you can still manually switch on and off the mask and everything. So yeah, play with it, you will see what happens. So that's the OFX. One important thing for OFX, if you have this little search thingy open, if you look carefully, you'll see that the whole OFX shifts downwards. And of course, then all the controls won't work. So that's why it also won't allow you to recognize it. It will say, no, it's not detected. So make sure you just leave it in the position where it's intended to be. So you close this search thing, you have it. So for that reason, you probably want to have a list of favorites where you don't have to search through them. And then you have a clear overview. It's currently 15 of the Resolves OFX are supported. I picked sort of the 15 less toy play, but more serious type of things. And some of the ones that are serious but don't have any controls that are useful for the controller I left out as well. So color space transformation, that kind of stuff. There are just a few things to select and nothing much to use a controller for. I'm always available for questions, of course. My email's in the documentation, and have fun, enjoy the controller. Bye-bye. Hi guys, Davinci here. Short update for the APC-40 to Davinci Resolve controller. Since the last big change involving the mapping of OFX, I've been able to map 15 Davinci Resolve OFX, but I was thinking like, okay, where does it go? Because I've mapped most of the key Davinci Resolve effects, but for sure there are OFXs which you like more or you use for only one project, or there's some third-party OFXs. So yeah, it would be amazing if you'd be able to map yourself using some sort of custom mapping mechanism. And guess what? That's exactly what I figured out using all of these toolkits I've been developing lately. All this scripting and open source stuff. So yeah, here we go. So let's say we have a plugin we really like for one specific project, let's say abstraction. And we want to map this out. Because currently, if I press the OFX, the tag button, you'll see not supported because it's not pre-mapped. So what do we do? Well, you press the button a bit longer and then you get custom OFX. So now you're in custom OFX mode and you have 3 buttons that give you access to different banks and different control functions. So the buttons next to here. So the first one shows you in orange which bank is currently selected, so it's bank 1. And the other 4 banks are not selected, and they're also empty because they're not flashing. And bank 1 is flashing, so there's something in there. Let's say we don't want that. So we go to the last one, which is erase. And then you see the bank 1 flashing in red, and if we press it, we'll erase the whole bank. So, bank is clear. So, nothing in there, but it is selected. So we start from scratch. So we start recording something. So we press the record button and we touch one of the knobs where we want to store information. So what do? Let's say we have all these different controls here, like pre-blur, abstraction. So let's start mapping them all. And we also map these 2 checkboxes. So we go one by one. So we put the mouse where we want the control to map. We press the record button and we touch and we let go. And now you have control. So if you do that fast, you go one by one. So we go to the next one, we map it on the second, go to the third one, and map it on the third. We go to the fourth one, map it on the fourth, and the fifth one. Let's say we map it on the next row, and then these 3 we map it on the top row for whatever reason. And the last one. And we map these little checkboxes to one of the 3 available. So let's say this one. And this one I map to this one. And let's map the reset button to this one. So, it should be fully mapped, right? Here, all the knobs functioning. We have 5. We had mapped here, these 3 controls. We map the checkboxes and the reset button. Fully mapped. Bank 1. So let's say we have another, let's say directional blur. It's a small one, nothing much to do there. Doesn't matter. So if you look, bank 1 is active, has something in there. So let's switch to bank 2. Switch to bank 2. So now if you see, bank 2 is active. Bank 1 is still flashing because it has something in there we just mapped. Bank 2 is empty at the moment. Let's put stuff there. So let's put blur strength on knob 1, blur angle on knob 2, and blend on knob 3. This we can't map. We're using this custom mapping. I can map it if I do it myself using the complete toolkit, but for this function I'm limited to the horizontal controls and checkboxes. Yeah, so let's see if it worked. So map this one, map this one. I think one we didn't map for whatever reason. Maybe I misclicked it. So let's see, 1, and now we should have 1. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3 all mapped. So if we want to go back to another bank, go back to Warren Bank 2. Sorry, let's go back to Bank 1, and then we select our other. What was it again? Abstraction, I guess. Yeah, abstraction. So we should be able to control abstraction. Yeah. And like with the other normal OFX functions, if you switch to another function, you go to a page, you come back, you still maintain your settings. So fully mapped, custom. 5 pages. You have some reset functions. So if I go to the last, we're now in bank 1. So let's say I don't like the pre-blur. I don't want to replace it with something else, but I don't like this button now mapped. So I press the reset button or the clear button, and I touch the control I want to clear. And now that's cleared. So now that doesn't function anymore. The other ones still function. If I want to clear the whole bank, I press the bank button while I keep the clear button pressed. So visual feedback on the status of banks, if there's something in there or not, with flashing, with colors. If you are recording, it's in red. And you basically have 5 banks, of each bank 16 knobs and 3 toggles. And any OFX control that has controls which you can control with your mid mouse wheel. So if you go on here, you test it, you go with your mid mouse wheel and it works, then you can map it using this function. Other types, you can't map with this. Okay, I think that's it. Maybe a small one. For the people who like Paul Door's plugins, I've mapped one of his very cool, let me see where it is, film grade plugins. There we go, film grade. So now I can switch to exposure control saturation page, or I can switch to the shadow, mid and high page, and all these controls are mapped in a smart way, where I have, like on the bottom I have the shadows, midtones, highlights, and then the red, shadow, midtone, highlight, green, shadow, midtone, highlight, blue, etc. On the outside I have shadow and pivot, highlight pivot, and similar to exposure and contrast saturation, where I have on the outside I have then the contrast pivot, and the rest is similar. So I have here exposure, contrast, saturation, and then red, green, and blue. This layout is a custom layout I've made because it made it easier to map. You just recompile it. You can do it yourself, or I can deliver this template so that you can compile it, or pre-compiled version, whatever you prefer, if you like this plugin. If you don't, it doesn't matter. It's just recognize it. Okay, that's it. Any questions, just mail me. Thank you very much. Hi guys, House here. Short update on the new features of version 4.0 of my APC-40 to Davinci Resolve controller. As of beta 9 of release 14, Blackmagic implemented the Mackie HUI protocol over MIDI, which is a protocol used by a lot of mixers and stuff. So I immediately jumped on it and spent a few days of serious hacking and programming and little to no sleep. And I managed to create a full mixer next to a already amazing color controller. So now you have also full access to a full dynamic mixer. So single press from the color page. So this is the color configuration. I've done some hue saturation curves, and press Fairlight, and you see everything is automatically updating and reconfiguring the whole controller. This is all real time. So here you see I have 2 mutes, which I have also there on the screen. So you see them updating. You can do it multiple at the same time. Solos with an alert button that you have a solo somewhere. I can press it and then it takes away all those solos, which is handy, of course. And if they're not in view, which I show you later, then you have an indication that there's something soloed. And the top row is for record enable. So on the right side, you have your faders. So fader 1, 2, etc. You can control them at the same time. You can control 3 at the same time if you're very handy or use more hands. If you have 5 hands, you control everything. You have a reset button where you can quickly reset the faders. Here is a navigation section where you can navigate these 8 channel strips to the right or to the left by a single channel. You see it also updating here. Or by a full bank. And now you have control over the next. And you go back and it's the previous again. So very quick navigating, and because of all the visual feedback, you also see where you are. And you're not guessing all the time. And so let's say this solo, and I move banks up. So it's not visible, but here you still see I have a solo somewhere, so very handy. To disable it, I have to go back, and that's just a limitation of the UI protocol. Yeah, I have a scrub button, knob, sorry. English for knob and button is sometimes mixed up. And I'll tell you later what this is, but so here you have some scrubbing with sound feedback. Switched it off, it's now only my headphone here. Very smooth. Yeah, so on the right bottom side, that's not anymore the UI protocol. That's the old custom user mapping stuff I made in the last release. And you can use them both very handy together. So the bottom 4 rows are for controls, like I've showed you, like zooming and navigation and this kind of stuff. You can map it anywhere you want on the Fairlight page or on the edit page. For the edit page, for example, I've mapped this to the quick scrolling, scrubbing. Here again, I mapped it to zoom and up and down. If you don't like it, you want to change something, you just hover over any control and you map it. Also, as with all these user-controlled mapping 5 banks, so let's say my screen configuration is different. So I have here selected the media pool. It's now open. So now this is pointing in the wrong location, so it wouldn't work. So I can remap it. Possible, of course. I can go here, I press this, and it's mapped again. Or if I don't want it, I can just switch to the next bank where I already did that. So I have 5 banks. This is the second one for a different screen layout I use a lot. And here it's mapped. So you can have different screen layouts, and then you don't have to continuously change your custom mapping. Very handy as well. That's for the bottom row. And the top row is for faders. Faders, we already had that. Well, before I didn't have that, so that's one of the reasons. Second reason is you can make a sort of split mapping. So here on top you have the left 8 channels. But let's say I want to control the stereo channel. I would have to move up, but then I can't control those left anymore. Well, you can if you just map this button to the stereo. So let's go to the stereo, click on here, and we map this, and now we have the stereo here next to. Yeah. So these little split operations are quite handy. So you have like 4 extra faders where you can put on master faders or sub buses or things like that. Very handy. Big difference though, if you look here, if I move any of these controls, it's all bidirectional. You see the controller updating for the mutes and the solos. Everything is updating. Really cool. If you go out of the page, you come back in the page, refreshed automatically pulls it in. So you always know where you are. For these, if I would change it here, of course this is custom mapped. I have now lost position. So it can't find anymore. So what you can do is you just move over it, let go, and you move back. So I've programmed an auto pickup, and you're done again. All these little things make life slightly easier if you are in a hurry and you miss something, you don't understand something. So let me see, I think I've covered it. Yeah, standard play and stop. It also works in Fairlight. And yeah, I think I already mentioned memory. So always back to where you are. It's also true for color, by the way. So if let's say I'm in the shapes and I go to Fairlight, it resets the whole controller, but there's some inbuilt smart memory function programmed. So if you go here, it will reactivate where you left off. So you can just continue and don't always have to keep pressing buttons and go to submenus and submenus and everything. I hate submenus, so there's almost none left anymore. The only thing that's left is for the OFX. I've explained last time. There's just no space anymore, and there's so much to map there. I've put that on a separate submenu, but who knows? Maybe I take it out and do some other crazy rewrite. Okay, that's it for now. Hope you like it. It's available immediately for any new users. Existing users are running the same standard resolution because it's already finished. For users are custom mapping, have custom resolution, sorry. I will deliver in the coming probably 3, maybe even 4 weeks because it was a massive write-up. So I have to do it nicely and test it, etc., etc. So you always have a proper controller. But the version you have now, the latest one, 3.5, has all this section and custom user mapping. So you have enough there to play with for a while. And especially also Blackmagic is changing sometimes little things, like in the last release they changed some screen positions, so I had to quickly fix that for all users again. So yeah, it's waiting for the final release of Davinci Resolve 14 and then to go. Okay guys, thank you. Bye bye.